Time for some things that I hate. So we have a follow-up from our good friend Chelsea Handler. So Chelsea Handler is angry that people were making fun of her for a really bad comedy video that she dropped on Valentine's Day. It was a comedy video in which she explained how wonderful it was to be a single alcoholic woman who smokes a lot of pot. And she talked about how it was great to be childless. She was the happiest person who was childless, she said, through her very obvious tears. And she made this issue the issue, right? None of us were talking about Chelsea Handler and her decisions not to have kids because, frankly, no one cared. And you decided to make it front and center. Well, this drove her on the set of The Daily Show yesterday. The Daily Show is just getting unfunnier and unfunnier. I mean, like they've now reached a comedy vacuum. There is no actual physical matter in this comedy space for The Daily Show. It's just a complete vacuum. And nature abhors a vacuum, so apparently they've put Chelsea Handler there or something. So Chelsea Handler had another monologue about how happy she is. She's so happy, you guys. She's so happy. She's the happiest person. Why are you calling her sad and a wine lady? Why are you? She's so happy. Here we go.
One thing that I have made abundantly clear is that I do not want children. I say it on stage. I say it in interviews. It's the first thing I say to myself in the mirror when I wake up each morning, right before I tell myself, God, you're a dynamic woman. Kids don't respect me. And quite frankly, the feeling is mutual. And the fact is, there are millions of women just like me, but for some reason, every single one of us at some point in our lives is shamed by society for not wanting a baby. These Fox News trolls are right about one thing. I am miserable. In fact, I was just scrolling through my Instagram feed the other day, realizing how miserable I am. I'm miserable on the beach. And then here I am miserable on the top of a mountain. And then here I am miserable scuba diving. And then I'm miserable again smoking a joint in a hot tub.
She's going to tell you how not miserable she is. Does she look like a happy person to you? Does she seem like a very, very happy person? She's so overjoyed. Okay, so here's the thing. Whether she chooses to have kids or not, frankly, I don't care. What I do care about is that society actually should favor the choice to have kids over the choice not to have kids. It's very important that people have kids. It makes them better people, obviously. I mean, I don't think Chelsea Handler is anybody's idea of a saint. But beyond the individual fulfillment that comes from having children, a society that is not built around the future generation is a selfish and stupid society. And that is precisely what we have constructed for ourselves. Not only that, it is a society that is demographically doomed to destruction. And so when you change the norm from it is good to have kids to we are utterly indifferent as to whether people have kids, what you end up with is a dying civilization. And that is precisely what we are seeing today. There is a Pew Research Center poll from November of 2021. And it shows a growing share of childless adults in the United States don't expect to ever have children. Quote, a new Pew Research Center survey finds that a rising share of U.S. adults who are not already parents say they're unlikely to ever have children. Their reasons range from just not wanting to have kids to concerns about climate change and the environment. So, I mean, this would be the giveaway. Who doesn't want to have kids? Lefties. That is the giveaway. Because the reason, if you're not having kids because you're worried that it's going to be hotter in 100 years than it is today, let me explain to you the vast span of human history when temperatures change fairly radically, and also when we have air conditioning and people can expect to live 8 decades. I mean, like, to pretend that your kids are in some innately greater danger because of gradual changing of the climate over the course of a century, and so you shouldn't have the kids, is insane. It's totally crazy. And then there are the people who just say they don't want to have kids because obviously they want to be like Chelsea Handler and be able to take Instagram photos of themselves for the pleasure of strangers smoking a joint in a hot tub. And apparently this is how you find fulfillment and true meaning in your life. As you get topless into a jacuzzi, the way that Chelsea Handler would, and you smoke a joint and you put it on your Instagram and then randos cheer for you. And it makes you feel really good for a second before you drink a bleep load of wine, as I said yesterday, and then fall asleep on your couch while drooling into your cat's fur. If you don't wish to talk about your private decisions regarding having kids or not, that's fine. But if you're Chelsea Handler and you decide to make that public, now it's everybody's business. You know what shouldn't be everybody's business? Your online data, which is why you should keep it private and safe from prying eyes. There are hackers who want it. Big tech wants it. The government wants it. Why would you hand them your data? That would be a dumb thing to do. That's the reason I use ExpressVPN every single day. Your ISP is tracking and logging every single website you've ever visited. They can legally sell that information to anyone. There are hackers out there. Every time you go to a coffee shop, they're trying to access your personal data. The government is working hand in glove with big tech. I use ExpressVPN to reroute my internet connection through their secure servers. I use ExpressVPN to reroute my internet connection through their secure servers so my internet provider can't actually track my online activity. Now, you might be wondering, if I route my data through a VPN. Can't the VPN log the data? Not ExpressVPN, because they actually created and used trusted server technology that makes it impossible for their VPN servers to store data. It literally is not possible. Stop letting people keep logs of what you do online. Visit expressvpn.com/Ben right now. Find out how you can get 3 extra months for free. That's expressvpn.com/Ben, expressvpn.com/Ben. Well, Chelsea Handler may not have kids, and that means that she can eat edibles and stay up till all hours of the night and then sleep until 2 o'clock in the afternoon. Like white, rich women do who don't have kids. But there's some of us who actually have a life and have jobs and have things to do. This is why we need Black Rifle Coffee. Black Rifle Coffee is fueling Americans before they go out and do epic things with their lives, led by a team of military veterans. The guys at Black Rifle Coffee are hyper-focused and hyper-vigilant in everything they do. They're obsessed with making great coffee because every adventure starts with an excellent cup of coffee. Their founder, Evan Hafer, has actually scoured the planet for the perfect beans, ensuring they've passed the most stringent standards of excellence. They're constantly coming out with new roasts to try, like their most recent Beware the Delaware roast. Not to mention, Black Rifle is doing incredible work for our nation's veterans. This year alone, Black Rifle Coffee donated over 120,000 bags of coffee to veterans and first responders, while expanding their own team of active duty service members, veterans, and veteran family members. Head on over to blackriflecoffee.com. Use promo code Shapiro at checkout for 10% off your purchase and your first coffee club order. That's blackriflecoffee.com. Use promo code Shapiro for 10% off. You can also find BRC in grocery and convenience stores near you. Black Rifle Coffee is America's coffee. According to Pew Research, some 44% of non-parents aged 18 to 49 say it's not too or not at all likely that they will have children someday. That's an increase of 7 percentage points from the 37% who said the same in a 2018 survey. Meanwhile, 74% of adults younger than 50 who are already parents say they are unlikely to have more kids, virtually unchanged since 2018. So what does this mean for society? Well, it means that we're going to go bankrupt. Let's say that you're a big fan of the social welfare state. Well, congratulations on having trashed the entire pyramid scheme that you guys rely upon, the demographic pyramid scheme. One of the things that is very obvious is that countries that enter demographic decline because of a values change have a very tough time reversing that demographic decline. There's an article in the New York Times from Andrew Jacobs and Francesca Paris titled, "Can China Reverse Its Population Decline? Just Ask Sweden." And they point out that China's population has now begun to decline. And they say even places that have not begun to lose population yet, like Australia, France, and Britain, have been grappling with demographic decline for years as life expectancy increases and women have fewer children. History suggests that once a country crosses the threshold of negative population growth, there is little its government can do to reverse it. As a country's population grows more top-heavy, a smaller, younger generation bears the increasing cost of caring for a larger, older one. So it turns out that there are, in fact, societal consequences to a cultural shift from caring about the future and having kids to not caring about the future and not having kids. We are a society that doesn't care very much about our children. We don't. We've decided, in large scale, at least according to our cultural arbiters, that kids are mainly useful so you can go on Instagram and virtue signal about how you're transing them. This is the thing that really, really matters, is how liberal you can make your kids or how you can screw up your kids, and then you can brag to your friends about how tolerant and diverse you are. Or alternatively, don't have kids at all, because the best life is the life that is lived without reference to time and the future. Countries such as the United States and Germany have been able to rely on robust immigration, even with relatively low birth rates, according to the New York Times. And of course, when you mention this, when you say, well, probably the United States, we should actually start having kids of our own, they're like, you're a racist. We should continue to import people from places where they have more kids. That's a strategy, I suppose. The good news is that the Chinese government is fully aware of the problem, said Yang Kai, a sociologist at the University of North Carolina, Chapel Hill. The bad news is there's very little they can do about it. So 2 decades ago, Australia tried a baby bonus program that paid the equivalent of nearly $6,000 a child at its peak. At the time the campaign started in 2004, the country's fertility rate was around 1.8 children per woman. By 2008, the rate had risen to a high of 2. By 2020, 6 years after the program ended, it was 1.6. So in other words, you can have sort of a temporary boost in birth, but what ends up happening is that you're actually front-loading the birth. What the studies tend to show is that when you pay people to have babies, then parents who are going to have 3 babies will have 3 babies, but they'll do it in a shorter time span in order to take advantage of the government money. But it's very difficult to convince somebody who doesn't want to have a baby that now they should have 2 babies because you're going to offer them money. John Bongart's demographer at the Population Council says, you're not going to reverse the trend. If you throw in the kitchen sink and make childbearing more attractive, you may be able to prevent the population from falling off a cliff. Even the success of some of these efforts has had limits. No country has been able to reach a sustained return to a 2.1% replacement rate. The United States rate fell below 2.1 in 1970s and then slowly rose back toward the replacement rate by 2007 and then collapsed again after the Great Recession. Sweden has done the same thing. In 1980, they introduced what they called the speed premium, which was if you have babies within a certain amount of time, then you get a subsidy. It increased the population increase to about 2. the population growth rate. And then it started to decline again. Birth rate in Sweden fell throughout the 1990s. Over the last 50 years in Sweden, the fertility rate has fluctuated significantly, rising roughly in tandem with economic boons. You've seen the same thing in Hungary. Hungary has really incentivized childbearing through financial rewards. And what they've seen is a slight uptick in the number of kids by family. At the time that efforts began in Hungary by Viktor Orban in 2010, Hungary's fertility rate was just over 1.2. That was among the lowest in Europe. Over the 2010s, the rate climbed to around 1.6. It's unclear whether it's going to be able to sustain or whether it's going to dip off again. Now, what is the reason for all of this? Well, it's true that in every country, as countries get richer, people tend to have fewer kids. That is because traditionally, in societies that are poorer, people tend to see kids as economic assets, and as societies become richer, your kid becomes an economic burden. Just in pure econ terms, right? The amount of money that you're going to spend on the education and upbringing of your kid in a rich country tremendously outweighs the economic benefit of having a child. If you're in a very poor country, kids become labor very early. They become part of the family farm. They are sources of efficiencies. That does not hold true in richer countries. So you start to see birth rates decline. This happens literally everywhere. But there are certain cultures where people continue to have kids, even in developed countries, even in economically advanced countries. Which parts of those culture? You guessed it. The parts that take religion seriously. Mormons are still having kids. Religious Catholics are still having kids. Orthodox Jews are still having kids. Religious Muslims are still having kids. Anyone who takes the injunction to have kids seriously on a moral level and recognizes that there is a generation beyond their own, that the height of human existence does not lie in taking a picture of yourself scuba diving and putting it on Instagram when you are 50 years old, the way that Chelsea Handler is. Any part of society that recognizes those fundamental truths is likely to continue growing. Any part that does not is likely to continue fading. Secularism, in other words, bears the seeds of its own destruction because it leads to societal sterility on a population level. And that is what you are seeing in the West. And so if you wish to reverse this decline, then perhaps our society should stop on a cultural level normalizing and championing child-free living as though it is an alternative good to choosing to have kids. It is better to have kids than not to have kids. That should not be a controversial statement. The fact that it is signals why our civilization is in a state of serious decline. Alrighty, guys, the rest of the show is continuing right now. You're not going to want to miss it. We'll be talking with Marissa Streit over at Prager University about the predations of social media and how it's cracking down on conservatism. If you're not a member, become a member. Use code Shapiro at checkout for 2 months free on all annual plans. Click the link in the description and join us.